Zhang has published a study which shows that the lowered IQ relates to the plasma fluoride levels. This is the level of fluoride in the blood before it goes into the brain, just before. And you can see with all his data points, there is a decrease in children's IQ as the fluoride levels in the serum goes up. So it's these measures of individual exposure which further strengthen our conclusions here. Now, this is what Philip Grandjean said, author of this Choi analysis. It was also just published a book called Only One Chance about chemicals which damage the brain. He said, fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. That's his expression, chemical brain drain. The effect of each toxicant may seem small, but the combined damage on a population scale can be serious, especially because the brain power of the next generation is crucial to all of us. And now I want to use a series of pictures to illustrate what he's getting at here. And incidentally, he's used these same pictures, are better drawn than mine, in a videotape that's available on the web, so you can look at his explanation. But basically, IQ follows a normal distribution curve, the bell-shaped curve. The heart of the bell is the average. Most people have an average. If you're looking at height, weight, or in this case IQ, most people will be around the average value. But look at the two tails of this bell-shaped curve. And the green, the area under the curve, that's the number of kids above an IQ of about 130. Those kids are very bright or geniuses. So if you look at the green area as a fraction of the total area under that curve, that's the fraction of kids in any population which is going to be very bright, going to be genius level, okay? You want to get to geniuses, maybe you need to push it out a little bit further, a bit smaller. Now at this end of the curve, the magenta is that area under the curve is the fraction of the population which is mentally handicapped. Now, if you were to shift downwards by 5 IQ points, the average would drop from 100 to 95. A school teacher would not be able to distinguish between two pupils in the class, one with an IQ of 100, one with an IQ of 95. So we wouldn't notice this. Unless we were doing careful studies, we wouldn't notice that this is happening. But look what this shift does to the two tails. It halves the number of geniuses in your society, and it doubles the number of mentally handicapped. And I don't think I need to say much to convince you that this would have huge social ramifications and economic ramifications for an industrialized society like the United States, competing in a global economy. If you halve the number of geniuses in your society, you halve the potential to get your Gates and people like that. And you also double the number of children that are going to need social services for the rest of their lives, and all the other social implications. So I think it's clear that once you know that a chemical used in daily lives has this potential of shifting the IQ downwards, how much proof do you need before you say, oh my God, stop it? Now, if this was a chemical byproduct from some process that we were really keen on, supposing it was a contaminant from Silicon Valley, where they're making all these computers which we want so desperately, you'd know, it would be tough, wouldn't it? Tough to say, here's something that's an incredible boon to the economy, but we've got to stop using it because it might be lowering the IQ of our children. But what if it's something that we are deliberately deliberately adding to the drinking water. How much do you need before you turn off the tap? How much more information do you need than 200 or 300 animal and human studies to turn off that tap? Where are the doctors in this country? Where are the people in education in this country? Where are the public health authorities in this country if they can't see that? That's why you should be getting angry. That's why you should be getting organized and bash these heads of these civil servants of yours and your counselors to stop this foolish practice. Thank you. They asked Cesar Chavez, the great workers' union leader, Cesar Chavez, Cesar, how do you organize? He said, one person at a time. But Cesar, tell us, how do you organize? One person at a time. It's got to be one open mind at a time, leading to one community at a time. Affecting change is like driving a nail through a piece of wood. The expert can sharpen the nail. To affect change, you need the hammer of public opinion. That's the teamwork here. I and people like Bill Osmondson and other experts, we can sharpen the nail, but now you have to take the hammer and drive those nails home. Well, first of all, we've got plenty of resources. You've got the NRC report, which is the Bible of toxicology on this subject. You've got our book. You've got our webpage, 50 Reasons to Oppose Water Fluoridation, which is available online from our webpage, fluoridealert.org. You've got a 29-minute video, Professional Perspectives on Fluoridation. That's 15 scientists articulating this. People have produced this DVD in hundreds. Go to the webpage, download it. If you can't download, get somebody under 12. They'll be able to do it for you. Download it, make umpteen copies, and get it to everybody that you can think of, especially your dentists and doctors. My son made this one, 10 Facts on Fluoride, which goes with the booklet. And my son also has just put up the study tracker. If you're a researcher, you've got access now to the most fantastic database on fluoride's toxicity from anywhere in the world. And this hasn't come from the millions of dollars spent by the CDC or the ADA. They put all their money into propaganda. It's the citizens who've made available the science on this subject, including translating umpteen studies in Chinese, Russian, and others. Many citizens, media, and decision makers have little idea of the number and caliber of the people fighting fluoridation around the world. I can tell you, I have had the privilege of going to communities all over Australia, all over New Zealand, all over Canada, all over the United States, all over Ireland, and several places in England. I've been to Israel and I've been to Japan on this issue. And I can tell you, there are dozens and dozens of communities. And those people are fighting fluoridation, not to make money, not to get power. They come to the meetings, they're working their tails off, often using a lot of their own money. Why? For their kids, for their grandchildren, and for their communities. So I've had the privilege of working with some of the best people in the world, both fighting incineration and fighting fluoridation. There's little difference from what I see this end. It's exciting, but it's invisible. I see it, but most of you do not see it. Most of you see this as a marginalized group, struggling, battering your heads against the local brick walls and the local councillors, etc., the local health department. You see it as an impossible task. That's why we are making this visible. We need to make it visible, and we need to bring all the groups and communities fighting fluoridation together and form one alliance. And that alliance is the Worldwide Alliance to End Fluoridation. And I'm happy to tell you that this organization was one of the earliest groups to join that alliance. So this is what we've got to do. In each of our communities, we are vastly outnumbered. Around the world, we have a formidable number of people supported by formidable amount of scientific intelligence. But the world doesn't know that yet. We've got a lot of education to do. That's it.
This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, and we both welcome you to a jam-packed episode of The New World Next Week, which, of course, you can find everything you need at NewWorldNextWeek.com. James, let's not hesitate any longer. Let's get to the good news and show folks that, yes, Portland remains fluoride-free. We'll take it from our own Portland Tribune. As Portland voters reject water fluoridation, there weren't too many smiles Tuesday night at the site of the election night party of the pro-fluoride campaign, whose main slogan was Help PDX Smile, PDX being a nickname of Portland. Measure 26-151 lost by a resounding 3-2 margin, the fourth time in 5 tries that Portland voters have turned down the idea of fluoridating the city's water supply. Quote, at a very fundamental level, people understand that we don't want more chemicals in our water, end quote, said Kim Kaminsky, leader of Clean Water Portland, at a campaign party for fluoride opponents. The nonprofit Upstream Public Health brought the idea of fluoridating Portland's water to the city councilors last year, quietly building majority support on the council before the public really caught wind of the fluoride issue, and it was all back on track in Portland. The council unanimously approved fluoridating Portland's water last September, but the stealth campaign by supporters may have backfired. Fluoridation opponents with little money or professional political help quickly gathered enough signatures to force a public referendum, which happened yesterday, May 21st. Rick North, member of Clean Water Portland's steering committee, said, quote, in 30 days, we put together an operation that gathered 43,000 signatures. Portland remains the last major city in the United States without fluoridated water, and now that the voters have spoken, yet again, will remain so. James, we couldn't be very much more happy here in Portland as myself and my amazing girlfriend were pretty well involved in this fight. And of course, like anything, not as much as you really want to be. I know the night before the vote, I was kind of wringing my hands thinking, man, I didn't do enough. We're going to lose. I didn't do it. But it all turned out, I think, pretty well. The interesting thing, James, is somebody, I think there's a documentary film in this to be made. And I think our sort of local alternative press, I think, really kind of showed what they're all about. So here's the Willamette Week. You can't handle the tooth. Why the far right and left came together to defeat fluoride. And we also have the Portland Mercury here. The sanest arguments against fluoride and why they're all still wrong. So again, these are pretty much the youngish magazines that, you know, if we had investigative journalism, and we do a little bit here, they'd see that the community organizations were bought off. There's even new emails showing that the fluoride lobbyists leaned on state legislators, and even that's only just coming out in the last couple of days. So the interesting note is, you know, we'd ask, well, if there was any investigative journalists, maybe they could really kind of blow this story open wide. But I can't help be reminded of in 2008, a journalist for the Portland Mercury exposed our newly elected mayor's improper sexual relations, and her reward was a sweet job with that mayor. James, it would be like you deciding to take a job with Monsanto after you expose them and go, oh, maybe I should just I'll go work for them. We don't work that way, James. And I think this is a huge, resounding victory.
It is. It's a nice little victory for a change, so let's just bask in it for a little while. And this restores my faith in the people of PDX, who may buy into the hope and change Kool-Aid, but at any rate, they're drinking clean, fresh water for the time being. I'm glad this has happened, and I think again this is a testament to what can happen when people come together from the left and the right, the meaningless divide, to come together on issues of importance for everyone. And exactly as you say, I think the important thing to take home from this is that the pro-fluoride side was extremely well funded and a political organization and all of that, and the anti-fluoride was a completely grassroots, self-organized grassroots campaign that came together and managed to get the votes for get the signatures for the referendum and managed to get it through. Just an incredible testament to what can be done when people really mobilize around an issue like this. So my hat's off to everyone in Portland who helped out.
And I would like to think too that, you know, not only did we win, but I'd like to think now that we'll be that bellwether for other cities to go, hey, we can do this too.
Seattle began water fluoridation in 1970 after a referendum on the issue in 1968. However, Seattle's water fluoridation affects many more people than just the citizens of Seattle. Seattle Public Utilities sells water pre-fluoridated to the following wholesale customers: Issaquah, Sammamish Plateau, Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, Bothell, Woodinville, Duval, Edmonds, Lake Forest Park, Shoreline, Olympic View, North Shore, Mercer Island, Tukwila, Renton, Covington, Skyway, Coal Creek, Sues Creek, and a number of additional water districts. A full listing is provided on our website at wasw.org. The citizens of these cities and water districts have never had the opportunity to vote on the fluoridation of their water. And we have had over 45 years of additional research on the effects of fluoride on human health since that Seattle referendum in 1968. The fluoridation of drinking water has been a controversial issue throughout its history. As an environmental scientist and engineer with over 20 years of consulting experience, I appreciate a scientific approach to controversial questions. There is a great deal of recent research on water fluoridation that we need to know about and understand. And that's why I'm very pleased tonight to be able to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Paul Connett. Dr. Connett is a graduate of Cambridge University and holds a PhD in chemistry from Dartmouth College. In May 2006, he retired from his full professorship in chemistry at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York, where he taught for 23 years. His specialty is environmental chemistry and toxicology, and he is an expert on the research related to the nature of fluoridation chemicals and their effects on humans. I particularly appreciate that Dr. Connett takes a rational, science-based approach to this controversial topic. He's studied the research literature on fluoride toxicity for over 18 years, and he helped to found the Fluoride Action Network, for which he is the executive director. He speaks to audiences all over the world on the subject of water fluoridation. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you tonight Dr. Paul Connett.
Thank you, Scott, very much. 47 years ago, I became an activist. On this very day, 47 years ago, St. Patrick's Day. And the reason I became an activist was I was walking across the Cornell University campus. At that point, I wanted to get a PhD in biochemistry and find a cure for cancer. That was what was in my brain as a young Englishman at that time at Cornell. And I've been doing that for about a year, research into biochemistry, when I was crossing the campus, and this great green dragon walked in on the path. And I thought, well, this is intriguing. I'll follow this green dragon. And I followed the green dragon, which turned out to be 50 Irishmen, St. Patrick's Day. And I followed it into the Union building of the Cornell campus, right into a massive teach-in on the Vietnam War, with students threatening to burn their draft cards, screaming at professors, and professors screaming at students. And I remember that very day going back to the lab, and I could not concentrate. I could not concentrate on science, on molecules, on test tubes and things, knowing what these students were going through and getting an inkling of what might be happening to the Vietnamese. So I got involved in the Vietnam peace movement, which became the McCarthy for President campaign, then a whole series of other things. But I'm a walking example of what John Lennon wrote in one of his songs. Beautiful line, beautiful boy. It's life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. That's the story of my life. And the next event was in September of 1983, after a lot of political campaigning. I started what I thought would be the quiet life at St. Lawrence University. I went there. I was going to teach chemistry at a liberal arts college. It wasn't going to be high-powered. I wasn't going to have to do too much research, but teaching, which I love. And I was going to have my classical music program on the local public radio station, which was right next to the chemistry building. And I was going to watch my kids play baseball. I would have preferred that they play cricket, but they don't do much of that up in northern New York. And then one day, the college librarian said to me, "You're a chemist. What's the issue of incineration?" And I joined the campaign to fight the building of this trash incinerator in our county, St. Lawrence County. And that little journey has spent 28 years on that journey, fighting incineration. And it's taken me to 49 states in the US, 7 provinces in Canada, and 60 other countries. And this effort, 28 years of my life, is just now available between 2 covers on that whole issue. It's morphed from being opposed to something, the campaign of no, to the campaign of yes. Say yes to zero waste, the subtitle, Untrashing the Planet, one community at a time. And I'm delighted to say that Jeremy Irons, who starred in this movie, Trashed, has written the foreword to this book. That was an exciting moment. Now, I say all that just to give you an inkling that when my wife, 18 years ago, asked me to read some papers which she put on my desk, and when she told me what it was a bunch of papers on fluoridation, I said, "Take those away. These people are crazy." At that time, I did not want a third issue. I was trying to balance going around the world helping communities with incineration and so on. I was taking nearly every weekend, nearly every holiday, every break. I didn't want a third issue, and I certainly didn't want a third issue that would stigmatize me as Looney Tunes. And so when I started to read the literature on fluoridation, it was with one intention: as quickly as possible to get my wife off my back and convince her that these people were truly crazy. The flat earth, the Dr. Strangelove, and so on. And I didn't find that. I didn't find that. And it's spent the next 18 years fighting water fluoridation. First as a professor of environmental chemistry and toxicology, and then as with the Fluoride Action Network. And after 14 years, this culminated with this book. Oh, and I should say, what made this book as good as I think it is not me, but these two guys, Dr. James Beck, MD, PhD, a physicist, and Spedding Micklem, who got his doctorate at Oxford. He's a biologist. So we had three retired professors, chemistry, physics, and biology. And they really made this book. They got the tone right. Essentially, I'd got a draft of the whole thing, but they got it right. They changed the tone. We understated, not overstated, and everything was backed up with 80 pages of references to the scientific literature. And I, in my naivety, had hoped in 2010, when this was published, that it would raise the level of debate, that independent people and scientists, doctors, dentists, and others would read this and see that we weren't a bunch of Looney Tunes, that we made the arguments completely transparent, everything was documented. But sad to say, after over 3 years, there's not been one single written critique of this book. And maybe the most depressing example of this is that shortly after it was published, I gave a presentation to the Ministry of Health in Wellington, New Zealand. There were about 20 people there, much to our surprise. We were expecting 2 or 3, but 20 people showed up. So they're clearly interested. And I went through the whole book, what was in the book, and at the end I said to them, look, we, as 3 opponents of fluoridation, 3 scientists opposed to fluoridation, have done everything that you could expect from people that are opposed to something. We've documented the whole case, we've articulated it, and everything is backed up with these references to the scientific literature. I said, we've done our job. Now this is your policy. This is your program. I want you to get some of your bureaucrats, your experts, to read this and come back with a critique of it. And if you can't do that, you should stop promoting it in New Zealand. Nothing. Nothing in 3 years. And yet the Minister of Health went on television in New Zealand complaining about the opponents of fluoridation, misrepresenting the literature. Where is the misrepresentation? Where's the misrepresentation in this? No, we don't get a response from there. What we get is propaganda on TV. And it just gives you an inkling, a microcosm of the nonsense that opponents of fluoridation have had to put up with.